Well, a number of things are going on in the world, and we'll be talking about those, and we'll see who joins us later on to discuss them as well. I'm expecting a guest from the peace community and all along those lines, so we'll see if they are able to make it or not. But definitely a number of things are happening in the world. Category 4 Milton poses extremely serious threat to Florida and could upgrade again, according to the NHC and everything. So that's something that's in the news, and it definitely looks like that is something that folks are worrying about over there in Florida, among other things. And it looks like folks are having various takeaways from the 60-minute interview that Kamala Harris got and everything. So apparently Kamala Harris got a 60-minute grilling that she has avoided elsewhere. So definitely we'll see how folks' reactions were to that particular activity that went on and all along those lines. So definitely I know some folks that were watching that. I have not had a chance to see it myself, but I'll go back and see how that is going as well. So definitely a number of things are going on in the world as always, including a number of world issues. And we'll talk about those as well as we see who joins us and all in that space. Yesterday, Israel marked the anniversary of the October 7th terror attacks with tears and anger. October 7th, 2024, Israel marked the anniversary of the Hamas attacks as the Middle East war continues to rage. So that's something that folks are talking about as well, and folks are definitely paying attention to that as well. So definitely some folks are even saying Gaza is in ruins after a year of war, and there's a look back at 365 days of genocide in Gaza and all in that space. And definitely a lot of things are going in that kind of way. And the pioneers in artificial intelligence won the Nobel Prize in physics. So the godfather of AI, who left Google last year, is the person that won the Nobel Prize in physics. So that's something going as well. So a lot of people, including Rick Rosner, have been talking about AI and all in that space. And it looks like that is definitely a very popular conversation as well. And Hezbollah supports a ceasefire efforts in Lebanon, the deputy leader says. So Hezbollah endorses a Lebanon ceasefire effort for the first time. And the Hezbollah deputy chief backs Lebanon ceasefire efforts and omits mention of the Gaza deal. So that's something else we're seeing in the news as well. And definitely looks like folks are still talking quite a bit about what's going on the West Bank, and definitely even how Hezbollah is responding, because Hezbollah fired over 100 rockets at Israeli civilians in Haifa. So looks like a defiant Hezbollah fired rocket barrage at Israel and vows more attacks. So definitely that's something that folks are paying attention to, as also a top Hezbollah man was killed in a Beirut strike as ground ops expands in South Lebanon. And an author that's out there was explaining why he feels that Palestinians and Israel are living under apartheid and all along those lines. So definitely that is something that folks are paying attention to as well. So CBS rebukes the anchor Ta-Nehisi Coates and all in that space, saying that he didn't meet certain standards. So that's what the CBS News executives are saying, that the Ta-Nehisi Coates interview didn't meet the standards that they like to have, and all along those lines. So definitely that's something that folks are paying attention to as well. But we've had a lot of reports about what's going on with the hurricane. So I'm going to bring a report that we had earlier about the relief efforts in that area, and then I'll be right back with some more news items, and hopefully some of our folks will be joining us as well. But first, let me get to this particular report and let y'all check this out.
Assignment off the board with these guys. And so we've got them out here. And those are the airports that we're flying to. They get final instructions. And then we've got an area where they just kind of chill out in here. Then what happens is the forklifts leave here with the load, with the pilot, They go out to the airplane's out there, and the pilot loads into the plane how they want to with the help of the forklift drivers. And this is how the machine works right here. This is how we're getting 65,000 pounds out yesterday, 123 flights, and we have no idea how to put a number on what we're doing with trucks and trailers. So I hope this is giving you guys an idea of what we're doing out here, and we're trying to make you proud, and we're trying to save our people up in the mountains. And yeah, just like yesterday, I am tired, but it's so worth it. It is so worth it to help you folks out. Everywhere you guys all live up in the mountains, that's where I ride my motorcycle, man. It's just absolutely beautiful. We know it's cooler up there. We love our mountain areas. We love our Biltmores. We love our Chimney Rocks and all those places. So just want to know that we're working here for you guys. We're working really, really hard, and I hope we do justice. I did stay up a lot last night and read through your comments as far as where we can go, where is the most need. And I'm blown away by the fact of the little communities that are still in dire need. I know we're chewing through the materials up there, and that's okay. I want to reach out to the other states, because our North Carolina people are probably about to get burnt out on doing donations. So if anybody can ship from out of state to here, that would be great. I've got a semi truck sitting out here from Maryland. So shout out to everybody up in Maryland for loading that thing up. That's pretty awesome. Sorry, it's been a long week. It's overwhelming. So all right, suck it up, Matt. Suck it up. There we go. We got a bunch of charcoal here. They have organized buckets of tools for everybody that's starting to work on your houses. You know, these are care buckets with hammers and crowbars. We've got gloves. We need more chainsaws and generators. I sent 500 gallons of diesel fuel up to Banner Elk today. We could use some non-ethanol gasoline in barrels. That would be helpful. I can't send that by plane, but I can definitely send that by truck. It's hard, but thank you. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you later.
Like I said, that was the reports coming up on the mountains in North Carolina and everything. So we're going to see some other news. And then I've got Rick Rosner joining me, waiting to see if our guest is going to come on as well. But Trump secretly sent the COVID test to Putin during a 2020 shortage, according to a new book that's out there. So definitely that's something that we're seeing as well. And definitely that's something that is going on there as well. And definitely some folks are saying Trump and Putin have had as many as 7 private phone calls since Trump left the White House, according to Bob Woodard's new book. So definitely Bob Woodard has got a new book out, and this is some of the things that he is talking about. And a weekend, Iran still has a major deterrent, the nuclear option, according to the Wall Street Journal, and Israel, according to the Hindustan Times, is panicking after Iran nuclear bomb test reports and canceling this attack, and all along those lines. So definitely we've got a number of things that are going on in the world, and all along those lines. I'm going to bring Rick Rosner in and have him share some things that he's got on his mind, as well as Sasha Starr, and I'm going to try to get my guests on as well. But Rick, I'm going to turn it over to you just for a second, but if you got some news items while I answer this.
I overslept. I've only got one contact lens in, so only half my brain is working, so I know nothing. Let's go to Sasha. Sasha knows stuff.
I don't know all the stuff, let's just say, but I missed what's the nature of that phone call, what it's all about.
I don't know. I forgot to set my alarm, so I'm behind on the day already.
So why are we discussing something that we don't know nothing about?
I don't know. Here, let's...
what significance of that phone call, whatever it is? I think the issue remains whether this the bomb explosion in Iran, was it nuclear or not? Yeah. So far, nobody confirms anything, and I don't think in either case it will affect the decision of Israel, because You see, the aim of Israel in this conflict is to make the last war in this region. And if United States wouldn't plays this idiotic politics with Israel that oh, you have to negotiate and you have to do peace. But you see, it worked in case of Gaza because there were hostages involved. There are no hostages involved in case of Hezbollah and Houthis and Iran. So there, Israel has a free hand to do all destruction it needs to do to make sure that Hezbollah, their children and grandchildren will remember forever, never ever attack Israel, never ever attack Jews. So that's what happened, and the same with Iran and so on. Gaza is again is a different story because of the hostages, but I'll tell you one thing. The longer that story with hostages goes on, the more hostages will die. There are already information about some hostages. They're weighing 25, 30 kilograms. They're just about to die or so on. So unfortunately, it may happen that there will be no more issue with hostages. That's not the way we expect it to happen. But unfortunately, that's where it goes.
So I just Googled how the size of Hezbollah, and it says about 20,000 fighters. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with Google?
Well, Google, unless you will prove otherwise, Google is always right. So
Okay.
let's assume that there is 20,000. They can be wiped out in a matter of 1, maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah, just really
Yeah,
quick,
but,
Sasha, one
but
of the
they're
other things that was in the news was this notion of Trump sending COVID tests to Putin during the 2020 shortage. And apparently Bob Witt has written a book saying that Trump and Putin have been in constant contact with each other. So I was just wondering your take on that, because I know you've oftentimes talked about how Putin and Trump are still friends to this day and everything. But this is something that Bob Wood just recently put out in his latest book.
Well, there is a actually, I read about it yesterday that it was at the beginning of his presidency, year 2017. He met Putin in Hamburg, Germany, and Rex Tillerson was there with him and several other well-known people at the time. And Trump, he's asked me, Putin is, dear Mr. Putin, do you think that U.S. should provide any help to Ukraine? And of course, the answer would be, of course not. So the continuation of that would be, okay, so in case that I will not provide help to Ukraine, what's in it for me, Mr. Putin? That's where it all goes. He's a transactional son of a bitch for not having better.
well, but for anybody who doesn't know, I mean, Putin pegged Trump as a useful idiot 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Trump was trying to make a deal to build a Trump hotel in Moscow.
Hold on one second, because we actually have our guest, and I wanted to bring her in and everything along those lines, because this is Tasika Gabriel, and she's part of a peace organization, and I let her talk about what she's got going on and all in that space. So if you talk about Pathway to Freedom, and I think that's the title, if I remember correctly, but if you talk about your organization, because I know that you've been hearing, and we've been talking over the last several weeks about a number of the conflicts that are going on in the world, whether that's Ukraine, whether that's Israel, whether that's a number of other places, and I know that you've actually been on the ground trying to find out whether we can have peace in society and all along those lines. So if you'll share a little bit about yourself, Ms. Gabriel.
Sure. I'm delighted and honored to be here, Mark. Thank you. It's Hezekiah, it's very phonic, Gabriel, and I'm the executive director of Pathways to Peace. And we are a UN peace messenger organization. We work on the ground internationally with the UN and outside of the UN. And our work is really to build peace builders, and to be able to inspire and co-create peace in our world.
Yeah, just really quickly, because like I said, and we talked about a number of these conflicts that have been going on for, at least in the case of Israel, for about a year, even though that conflict has been lasting much longer than that, and everything along those lines. And Ukraine is definitely going into another anniversary as well. And even in Africa, there have been a number of conflicts. So I'm sure that there are people around the world that are wondering if we can ever see peace in our society. So I just wanted your take on that, since your organization is definitely working to try to bring about peace, even helping corporations understand the merits of peace. So just wondered if you could talk about your either optimism or lack of optimism with all that is going on in the world.
Yes. Well, certainly when we look around, there's a lot that would say that we wouldn't see peace in our lifetimes, but I believe that we will. And so my optimism stems from really the knowledge that it begins with each of us. Each of us is a pathway to peace, and that we begin by kind of internalizing and nurturing our own internal peace, and then we bring that into our relationships, our communities, and our work in the world. So I feel very privileged that I am in a position where I can work with people around the world that are doing this work, and it's making a difference. So I know it's easy to feel powerless. And the problem with feeling powerless is that it can be immobilizing. It can stop us in our tracks. And so we need to make sure that we embrace our own hope, our own belief in peace, and then we're able to bring those messages into the world and lift that consciousness, change those mindsets that would that continue to choose war over peace. And so there's so much more to it than that. But I see Sasha has a hand up, so I'll stop there. I'm happy to go deeper around that as well.
Thank you, Ms. Gabrielle. A few basic questions before I'll begin to better to understand what would be the following questions. Are you based in United States?
We are, but we have projects around the world, and we work with global leaders. Yes.
But your organization itself based in United States?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
We have an office in the Bay Area, San Francisco, in the U.S., and then we have a business office in Minnesota.
Okay. How many people work in your organization?
Well, we have a whole lot of volunteers. We're really volunteer led. So we have about 50 volunteers who work with us. And I would say that almost all of our work is done through partnership and collaboration with other global leaders and other global peace organizations.
Okay. And what is the budget, annual budget of your organization?
We do a whole lot of international work on a shoestring budget. Our budget's about $250,000 a year.
That's all, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, just really quickly, and I had a question, tiny to what Sasha was asking you and everything along those lines. You mentioned that your offices are in Minnesota, and we know that there are definitely some divisive forces and divisive conversations in Minnesota. Minnesota has one of the larger Arab populations and all along those lines. So I just wondered, how much does your organization work across religious lines and work across political lines? Because even on this show, we sometimes talk to people that are either very conservative and like pro-Trump, and people that are definitely not more pro-Harris and everything. So I just wonder, how do you work across the religious and the political divides?
Well, the thing about peace is we know that everyone deserves peace, regardless of their political persuasion, their cultural heritage, their background, everyone deserves and needs, and I believe is hungry for peace. And so we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. So we are by nature nonpartisan, and we work with everyone. And so it's just that, I encourage people, I'll be bold, I encourage people to stop worrying about choosing sides, to stop using their energy to choose sides, and instead to really recognize that everyone deserves peace and to work from that place.
Yeah, just really quickly along those same lines, how did you found your organization? I saw Sasha's got other questions. Rick and Jacoby may have questions as well, but how did you found the organization, and are you the founder of the organization, and how did it come about?
Yes, well, Pathways to Peace is 42 years old. I'm not the founder of the organization. I had the pleasure to work with the founder of the organization for about 5 years before she passed 3 years ago. And she really is known and really beloved worldwide for her efforts to, for example, to work with the United Nations to create the International Day of Peace, to work with the United Nations to establish the Declaration and Program of Action for the culture of peace. And so her name was Ava Madison. And this last year, we celebrated just a month ago, not even a month ago, on Peace Day, the International Day of Peace, on September 21st, which happens annually. It's a UN established holiday that we came back to San Francisco, where we had 40 years ago, we created the first International Day of Peace with 40 countries involved. And so we had a big celebration there of peace, international peace with a global broadcast. And we laid the foundation for the next steps. I personally hope that we can work ourselves out of a job because peace will prevail on earth. But we did lay a foundation for the next steps.
Yeah, Rick, you had a question.
What exactly do you do? Do you meet with national leaders? How do you increase the odds for peace?
Yeah, we mostly work, we work with everyone. We work with international and national peace leaders to support each other's work and to work in partnership for greater impact. We work with member states and civil society at the UN to educate about peace, to bring projects that establish peace in certain areas of our world. And we certainly work with conflict resolution, mediation, when we have the opportunity and we're invited to do that.
Ms. Gabriel, along those same lines that Rick just asked you, a lot of the issues around peace are issues that deal with things that go on in society. I mean, even here in the United States, we're dealing with the homeless situation, and of course, we're dealing with the need for housing, and of course, even in some of the African nations, there is famine and other things that are contributing factors to the reasons that people might launch wars and everything along those lines. So how are you able to deal with these very deep issues that can sometimes be the causes of war? Because a lot of times it's because of the lack of resources or the wanting the other person's resources that you may not have that lead to war and everything. So I'm just wondering, how do you deal with these very complex issues that can be part of the reasons that we have a war and don't have the peace that we would like in society?
Yes. Well, underneath all of let me step back. This is such a beautiful and complex question, Mark. And so I'm going to try to unpack it a little bit. So bear with me for a little while. So what we know, for example, you probably know about the the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN.
Yes.
And these are 17 goals that attempt to get at all of those issues that are causing suffering for the first 15 Sustainable Development Goals. And then the 16th goal is peace and inclusive societies. And the 17th goal is partnership. So I always say that that all of the first 15 could be resolved if we can work with partnership. Goal number 17, to create peace on Earth. Then all of those other issues would be non-issues. And underneath all of those issues is, as you've indicated, a system of oppression that underlies all of those societal issues. And the root underneath that systemic oppression, or structural oppression, which is all of those isms: racism, sexism, homophobia, ableism, classism, you name it. That creates a system of oppression that keeps people down and keeps them in a place of suffering. But underneath that is this myth of separation. Okay, and we now know, because science is merging with indigenous wisdom and with spirituality, to say that unity and interconnectedness is our existential reality. There is no separation. There never has been. And so a part of the work that we do is really to increase the understanding of this mindset that is now a myth, that we are all separate, to really increase understanding that we are all interconnected. And if we can all, as a global community, recognize that, then all of those issues that create suffering in our world will dissolve. Because how could I ever harm you if I recognize it harms me? How could I ever keep you from getting the food you need, the housing you need, the equal rights you need, the human rights you need, if I recognize that I'm going to be harmed by those things? So that is part of our work these days as well, is to embrace that science and educate around that science of interconnectedness and unity.
Yeah, I saw Rick's hand, but before I get to
So
Rick,
are you doing anything specifically? Are you doing anything specifically in the area of nuclear arms reduction and reducing the possibility of nuclear war?
Yes. If you go to our website, we have many projects there, as well as we do a lot of education. But we're doing some on the ground. We're a member of ICANN, and we have one of our incredible young advocates has been doing on the ground work in Albania around the treaty, and really gaining some incredible ground for Albania to be kind of a leader in getting the treaty established. We've done work there for about 5 years, and so that might be a project you might be interested in, Rick. It's a very important issue. I mean, we can't talk about peace when there's the risk of annihilation for all of us.
And just really quickly along those same lines, one of the things that's been talked about on this show and other shows is immigration, but also a rise around the world in nationalism and all along those lines. So just wondering, how has that played or hurt your efforts in peace? Because I know a lot of countries are very proud of their individual nations, and they oftentimes don't want outsiders to come into their individual nations and everything. So I was wondering how that nationalism has played in either helping or hindering, or even finding ways to either help or hinder your efforts.
Yeah. Well, I would say that we believe that it's not an either or, that one can have pride in their nation, their heritage, who they are as a people, and still recognize that diversity in unity. And so, again, this is I think, the leading edge of where we're at as in our world, as a world community, to recognize again that we are all connected. We can't not be connected. And when you look at global citizenship, you certainly recognize that. But we can try to remain isolated, but it's not going to work because we are a global community. But I believe that the beauty of unity through diversity means that you get to be proud of who you are and your individualism, and you get to recognize the power of unity that is the reality that you're living in.
You mentioned your organization being a UN organization, and the UN has sometimes been criticized for not being able to do as much as it was chartered to do and everything. So I just wanted your take on that, because I do know that sometimes the UN has faced criticism from various parts of the world because the folks wanted to do more than it actually is able to do. And some of that may be because of the way that it is structured and organized. But I just wanted your take on that, since your organization is a UN sponsored organization.
Yeah. Well, the UN gets a bad rep, and it is a lot about structure. You're so right that it isn't structured to have authority beyond the member states that, of course, come together. The beauty of the United Nations is still, it is the only institution that brings together the leaders from countries around the world to enter into dialogue. Is it perfect? No. Do we wish that more could occur? Yes. And we are, our organization is an NGO, so we are members of civil society. And the UN was set up to have these two bodies, civil society, as well as the member states, the General Assembly. And the beauty is when we bring those two together. And so more, I would say, my criticism of the UN these days is there seems to be a widening gap between civil society and member states, and we need each other if we're going to create global change.
May I ask you one question? Tell me, are you aware that several UN workers were on the payroll of Hamas and actively working and cooperating with Hamas against Israel?
I did not know that.
Okay, well, that means that you are sort of a low information person in charge of very important organization, and you're preaching and you want people to listen to virtues of UN, while UN is absolutely helpless, impotent organizations, and most likely is guilty of doing the certain actions that absolutely make peace impossible.
Yes, I appreciate that, Sasha. And I am not aware of all the inner workings of the UN. And I do know that there are efforts that are in process right now to rewrite the charter of the UN, and there are people who are looking at reforming the Security Council of the UN. And so again, we are a civil society nonprofit. organization, so we only have as much influence as is allowed as we come together to influence.
But I'm afraid your influence will be diminished if you ever mention of your cooperation with UN. 20, 30 years ago, it would sound good. Oh, UN is a great organization and you're associated with it or so on. But today is absolutely helpless, impotent, and most likely corrupt organization. When you're trying to sell ideas that you are cooperating with UN, actually your credibility goes way down.
Well,
So-
again, we are an NGO that works both with the UN and outside of the UN. So I appreciate your comments, Sasha, and your
Thank you.
opinions. I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I respect that.
All
Thank
right,
you.
do you have the ear of any leaders? For instance, a guy that I didn't like as president, Reagan, had a ton to do with nuclear arms reduction and the end of the Cold War. And I don't like his politics, but he and Gorbachev got together to knock down the number of nukes each country had by like 2/3. So do
Yes.
any national leaders talk to you guys?
Yes, I would say that it's not broad that we have that kind of influence. It's with individual leaders, again, both within the UN. We're working with Ambassador Chowdhury, who is the initiator of and the promoter of the Declaration of Program of Action on a Culture of Peace. And we have not personally, I have not personally worked with the presidents of countries other than we have had influence with our nuclear disarmament in Albania. And so again, that's a small country, but they are picking up leadership and desiring to lead around that issue. And so we will go where we're invited, first of all. Secondly, where we think we can have influence. And thirdly, whenever we have an opportunity to grab an ear, we take that.
Well,
So-
just really,
Have you ever tried to talk to Trump? Hold on, let me say this. Have you ever tried to? He seems like he can be persuaded by flattery. Have you ever tried to kiss Trump's butt?
No, again, because we are nonpartisan, that we can educate politicians, but that is the extent of our ability to influence. We can't align with one party or another. We can be open to hearing all of it. And again, we come in through the window of peace. And
But can't you talk to both sides? You've only got, there's only two sides in the U.S. for practical purposes.
Yes, we have not talked with either side at the highest level.
Just really quickly, you mentioned Albania, and Kim, who's one of our founders, is in the background. She's back in the States, but she was visiting that country, and she had some high praise for Albania, as I remember, and hopefully she'll join us shortly and share what she remembers learning when she visited that area. But I know from looking at your area, and I think that she's going to join us now and everything, but from joining and looking at your site, it also seems like you are very much into the business community as well. So it seems like you're not just dealing with government agencies, but also trying to make sure that business and corporations are also interested in the notion of peace as well. So could you talk a little bit about that corporate side?
Yes, certainly corporations have a lot of influence and a lot of power. So we do work with corporations. It's around educating on peace and peace practices. Where did she go? She was here a minute ago. Oh, there you are, Kimberly. Yes, welcome. And so yes, we do work with corporations as we can. Again, we are not a huge organization, And so we do a lot of work with the resources we have. And if any of you have a little extra money to invest, we would love to have you as investors in our work. It's important work, and I would encourage you to dig a little deeper around our history, as well as the programs we currently have going on that are not UN programs.
Ms. Gabriel, one question too. When you're talking about investing in your organization, investment is something that's supposed to have a return on investment with a profit.
Yes.
How is it in your case you're offering investors any profits, or derived from what?
Yes, we're nonprofits. So
then it's not investment.
Our return on investment, it's about mission and mission impact. That's the difference between nonprofit organizations and for-profit organizations.
Okay, so it's most likely support, it's not investment. Okay.
Well, like I said, that's semantics and everything, because investment can be a different word, because as Stephen Kinley knows, there are people that are even in the nonprofit world that talk about investment, and it is always not a financial investment. Sometimes it's an investment in terms of what you are gaining in the sense of the cause, whatever that cause may be. People invest all the time, Sasha.
Mark, don't try to double on mistake. There is no investment, period.
It's a different type of investment.
There could be a support, there could be some other means of helping the organization, but forget the word investment. Thank you.
Well, people, I will say this, a lot of people do use the word investing in their charitable contributions. I'm investing in this program. People do use that term. I'm part of many charitable programs. I don't pitch it as an investment personally, because I am a entrepreneur, and I'm very careful on my pitches. But we have a thing in financial teachings. It's the money you earn, right? And then I always say the money you burn. How do you burn it? You budget it. You save it. You put money in investments. And then they always say charitable donations. Of course, I add taxes. The education system in the U.S. tends to forget to tell you have to pay taxes when you're a kid. So you're in ultra mega shock when you get older. But so I'm changing that book but some people do. But I agree with Sasha. Maybe soften that pitch just a little bit. Your return on investment is how good you feel when you donate. I do want to give a shout out to Albania, best healthcare system I've ever had to use, and it's free. I was so shocked when I sat there and said, okay, so where do I pay? One of the things I noticed is they didn't have to worry in your intake about doing a lot of admin work and whether your insurance will cover it or getting insurance approval or anything like that. All they cared about was who you are, what your symptoms are, and healing you. The whole message that I got from them is we want you better and get you back out. It wasn't about keeping you and maintaining prescribed drugs to cover their investments here in the U.S. for pharma. So one of the things I loved about Albania was how much they cared for the people, their health, how much they invest in their health. The other thing that I noticed since the Communist Party was run out back in 1999, I think it was, how much it has grown and prospered, but not as big corporations. You can't just go there, snap your fingers and get a Marriott hotel. Everything is boutique hotels, family owned, a lot of pride put into these places and businesses, a lot of nice restaurants. And again, a lot of pride in keeping them clean, keeping the food there. They work all kinds of hours to make sure everybody's happy. They are a big community in each little village from what I witnessed. But it is a good time to invest in Albania because it is growing. It is, to me, the hidden treasure. Nobody ever talks about it. My sister was like, why hadn't I ever heard about Albania? Because she's seen the pictures that I brought back. The history is older than the history in Greece, preserved beautifully. You can walk into the churches, the castles are still functional, and they're thousands of years before Christ.
Yes.
And they even have a book that was written before the Bible was started. So I'm just telling people there's a hidden treasure there. Be careful with it. Please don't take and abuse any options and opportunities you have. Help preserve this country. But if you're going to invest in the country and you want to make money, now's the time to do that. But be nice about it. Don't go over there and do what you've done to other places.
Yeah. Ms. Gabriel, just really quickly, what made you decide to become a peace activist? That's one of the questions I meant to ask you earlier and everything. So were you from a war-torn country, or were you from an area that is the reason that you decided to become a peace activist?
Yeah, I will answer that question. I do want to piggyback on what Kimberly said and encourage people to look at our website for the Albania project, because there's such a beautiful story there. One of the things we do is work with youth, and we do a lot of work in educating youth and teaching them how to be peace activists. And Renor Yani, whose heritage is in Albania, we started working with him when he was very young, when he was 16. And he's now the project lead that is making huge strides in bringing nuclear prohibition to Albania. So if you look at that webpage, you'll see what Renor is doing. And again, we try to generate funds for him to continue that work. It's incredible work, and he's making incredible progress. And Renor is now 23, and he is a global leader in nuclear disarmament. So I just wanted to add that piece. So my own story, thanks for asking, Mark. I feel I was always a peace activist from as far back as I can remember. And that might be true for others on this panel, but other listeners as well, that I was always the one who was standing up for those who couldn't speak for themselves. From even prior to entering elementary school. And so throughout my life, I was fortunate enough, even though I was orphaned at a very young age, my origins in my own family were one that I was encouraged to stand up for the rights of others, and to the degree that I could, to eliminate the suffering of others. So that has been my path my entire life. And it just led me into several other opportunities throughout my life. And at Pathways to Peace, we say, it doesn't matter what your background is, you are a pathway to peace. So look around you at your own, the people that surround you, your own relationships, your own disciplines, your own family members. You have an opportunity to be a pathway to peace in all your relationships as well as in the world.
Okay, I have one question for you. The biggest conflict since Second World War in Europe is a war between Russia and Ukraine. What are your thoughts, how your organization is being involved in it, and what do you think are the steps necessary to have a peace there?
Well, I'm not going to tell you anything you don't already know, Sasha. So, because you're clearly very well informed and have your own thoughts about that. So
Okay, forget about Ukraine and Russia. Okay, what's happened in Hamas, Israel, Hezbollah, Israel, Iran? What are your efforts for peace, and how is it possible to achieve?
Again, I think that you have your own thoughts about that. and I would just probably agree with what you know. So here's what I do know, that we can't resolve any conflicts without dialogue. And dialogue tends to be very difficult to come into these days. And without that, and of course, it's the basis of all peace agreements, ceasefire agreements, is that we come together, whether it's, again, our own personal peace work, that we come together in the right, with the right intentions, to be able to listen, to be able to understand all sides, to be able to then create enough understanding and enough goodwill that agreements can be reached across those barriers.
But throughout the history of the world, all wars were fought until one side will decisively defeat the other side. And then could be some agreement, some kind of a peace agreement or whatever it might be. But the victory has to be achieved by one of the sides. If nobody can achieve achievement, as it happened once during Korean War, then both sides simply could not continue the fighting anymore, neither North Korea nor South Korea. So there was a demarcation line, and that was the end of the war, essentially. So in case of Ukraine, Russia, or Israel, Iran, etc., and the other terrorist groups and so on. So the natural thing is to expect one side decisively defeat, demolish, and absolutely liquidate the other side, and that would lead to real peace. So if you are for peace, you have to desire as soon as possible to defeat of all this evil proxies of Iran and Iran itself, or Russia in case of Ukraine. Is that correct or not?
Yes, I would say that I disagree that that's the way to peace. And I think we know more now. We are better people now with everything we have at our disposal. We do not have to have defeat as part of a peace process.
Why?
So that's my opinion.
That's her taking everything. Rick, you had another question, but I think Jacoby had something he wanted to add as well.
Yeah. So I have a recommendation. If you haven't already read the book, there's a recent book called Nuclear War by Annie Jacobsen. And I believe, have you read it?
Yes.
So you know that one of the greatest threats to peace is accidental nuclear war. And one of the ways to save the world is to get attention and pressure on countries like the U.S. to develop systems so that nuclear war doesn't happen by accident. It almost happened in the 80s. It's only because a Russian colonel decided not to press the button based on signals that he's like, I don't like these signals. I don't trust them. I'm not going to launch our nukes. But if he'd been a bigger a-hole, we would have had nuclear war.
Yeah, that's true and everything. Just really quickly, Jatofi, I don't know if you had any comments. And also, Shaquille just joined us, and we've only got about another 5 minutes to go. So I definitely wanted to thank Tezakaya for joining us on this show, and hopefully she'll come back on some other shows.
Well, if we've only got 5 minutes to go, just give Jatofi those 5 minutes because.
Jatofi?
First off, I do want to thank you for the work that you do. It is a very tough thing, as you see as you walked in here and navigating, individuals with strong opinions, strong views on their own ideas and ideals of peace. So I can only imagine all the individuals that you have to come into contact with that are even more hostile or even more against what you're doing, even though they have the same idea that they want to get to.
Yes.
Since we're, I guess, at the end of the show, on a more lighter note, because it's been very tense, what are some of the, I guess, fun and enjoyable successes that you've come across as you've been on this this quest for peace? Because I think we all are, and we look for those nuggets of joy. So what are some fun nuggets that you can leave us with?
Well, I will say, and I mentioned this earlier, that there is a huge movement that not everybody is aware of, that I have the privilege to be a part of, where people are actually embracing peace. And we are working collaboratively with so many of those movements. But one of those is called Peace on Earth by 2030. And it is David Gershon. Hello. David Gershon who is the person, if any of you remember the first Earth Run in the 80s, who took the torch around the world. David Gershon was the one who founded that project. And everywhere the torch went, war stopped and peace prevailed. And so he's the one that created this new project, founded it, called Peace on Earth by 2030. I'm also a Rotarian, so I'm working with David to bring Peace on Earth by 2030 to Rotarians around our world. But that particular movement is seeing peace on the ground in many areas of our world where there was conflict. And so I would leave you with that. There's so many others, but that's a concrete piece. And thank you for recognizing that. I mean, what allows me to do my work is to hear the differences and to recognize that in our hearts we all want peace. We all hunger for that. And it's my role to listen, to garner more understanding, and to be able to always lead respecting that individual, who they are, what they believe, and caring for them as an individual, regardless of our differences.
That makes a lot of sense and everything. Along those same lines, I know one of the things that you do is the Exceptional Women of Peace. So I was just wondering if you could talk about that, because that's definitely something else that is out there that you do regularly that honors women.
Yes, Women Peace Builders. This year, we honored 7 women who build peace in the most challenging circumstances around our world. Our Exceptional Woman of Peace is from Afghanistan. Our Young Woman of Peace, who we also give an award to, is from the U.S., but we have had Young Women of Peace from all over our world every year as well. And then we honored leadership in science and technology this year, 2 women peace leaders, and then 3 women who we gave Lifetime Achievement Awards for their incredible work for peace around our world. So again, you'll be able to plug into that ceremony if you choose to. It's if you want a lift, go to that link. We just on September 13th, the 25th anniversary of the Declaration and Program of Action for a Culture of Peace. We always have the ceremony on that day. If you want
to do the Americans.
Be inspired, go watch that ceremony. It's very
I
cool.
appreciate everything. Shaquille, did you have anything really quickly you wanted to add? Because like I said, we got about a minute and then we got to go to Sasha's show. But did you have anything you wanted to add? Because I know you've done some work in the peace activism field as well.
I'm very sorry, my love. I haven't been watching this show, so I don't know what you're doing. I am out tonight on one of my rare nights out, and I am playing at what you would call a casino. And it's got this jackpot over here, which is 50,000. So yeah, I'm sorry, I've got nothing to add to the conversation.
No problem. Did you have anything you wanted to add really quickly, Kim, as we get ready to get on out of here?
Oh, no, I would love to follow up on her. There's so many stories that I heard while I was there about the Civil War, the communism, the missing children, stories, which, you know, I've done some investigative research on. So thank you for your efforts and for helping people. And yeah, I mean, Albania is a beautiful place. I encourage anyone to take vacation and spend some time there. There's some of the most beautiful waters I have ever swam in, the most beautiful resorts I've ever spent time in. The people love Americans. They fly the U.S. flag everywhere I go. I'm told they were the first to recognize the United States when we've done many things. So, you know, give your support, helping people anywhere. Right now, unfortunately, we have to give a lot of our support to the hurricane victims who have lost all of their homes, businesses, towns. And we're getting ready to get hit with another hurricane. And I hope you're safe where you are at right now, because it can be very, very dangerous when these winds decide to do whatever they want to do. Thank you, everyone, for watching us. We will look forward to seeing everyone same time, same place tomorrow. Have a great and safe day. Don't forget to batten down your hatches. Fill up your tubs with water, get your flashlights out, a hat, good pair of shoes, and a jacket. It might get stormy and dangerous where you are. Until then, everyone, have a great day. And I don't know why I can't find the outro, but we're going to end the show.